Greetings, greetings. Your mic mute them all guy.
Yes, good night, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the conversation. Apologize for the a bit of a late start this evening. Hope you're having a great Tuesday evening. Of course, we're going to have an interesting conversation for a very short spat tonight. We're going to be talking a lot about everything that's happening in the global spectrum, including some new revelations of stuff happening as well in Guyana regarding the whole immigration structure and stuff to the US. So, but just before we get into tonight's conversation, we got that disclaimer for you. So go right ahead, Martin.
And the disclaimers read: the views, opinions, and statements expressed in the conversation are solely those of the individual hosts and guests, and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of our advertisers, Majestic Music Radio, Gem Radio, or Gem Network. The content of this show is intended for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered as professional advice. Listeners' discretion is advised. Neither the station nor the network assumes any responsibility or liability for the accuracy, completeness, or validity of the information presented. All content is subject to change without prior notice. With that being said, as always, you can Google it, or now you
Yeah,
have AI integrated in everything. So
I'm telling you,
yeah,
and
man.
the AI integration makes it a lot faster for
Of
us to
course,
get information because you can directly target the AI integration to say, look for this specifically. So it doesn't bring you a whole heap of stuff that you really weren't interested in getting information on. But
exactly.
yeah, let's kick off tonight's conversation dealing with this new development um, coming out from the U.S. Embassy
Hmm.
regarding Guyanese specifically. Of course, we are Guyanese. So they're saying that over 3,100 Guyanese have overstayed in the U.S. Um, on an average, and this average started in 2023, and they recorded that those recorded incidents were done by the CBP report, and it says more than 3,100 Guyanese nationals who entered the United States on non-immigrant visas for business or tourism purposes, that will be the B1, B2, overstayed their legal period of stay in the fiscal year 2023, according to the newly released report from the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, the CBP. The report paints a concerning picture of visa compliance for travelers from Guyana, placing the country well above the global overstay average between October the 1st, 2022 and September the 30th, 2023. A total of 56,965 Guyanese citizens were legally admitted to the US through air and seaports of entry. And of course, 3,186 individuals failed to depart the US within the authorized time frame, resulting in an overall overstay rate of 5.59%. All right. So of this total, 3,070 were categorized as suspected in the country overstaying. All right. Nearing, they had no record of departure. And of course, they were not known to have changed their immigration status during that period that they were in the US. So in 2022, the rate was at 1.45%, making Guyana's rate nearly 4 times higher presently with the overstays. All right. Now, what is going to be happening? And based on this report, especially for those people who are vying to, now going into get, let's say, their visa, their visitor's visa or their business visa to conduct business in the US, they're going to be hit with either a 5,000, a 10,000, or a $15,000 bond. All right. And this is according to a Reuters report issued on Monday. The US could require bonds up to 15,000 for some tourist and business visas under a pilot program launching in 2 weeks, a government notice said, at an effort that aims to crack down on visitors who overstay their visas. All right. So I just wanted to kick the program off with that because we know for a fact that a lot of people have been issued their visas. Um, and 56,600 individuals got their visas between 2021 and 2023. And you have a lot of them, up to 3,186 of them overstaying in the US. And I'm wondering why um, that is happening, especially since Guyana is going through this uptick in terms of, not only job creations, but we are a growing environment, regardless of whether people want to accept that or not. Guyana is a changing environment. As a matter of fact, um, the World Bank, the IMF have all stated that Guyana is the fastest growing nation presently, if we stay on the correct trajectory. So, what do you think could be causing this kind of problem? Because to me, this just looks really bad on a nation that is on the uptake.
So I generally think that is a good number to have, really and truly. You said
Mm.
56,000, correct?
Yeah,
Total?
56,000 plus entered or were
Good.
issued visas to go, but 3,186 um, are not accounted for, but
Yeah, that is not a bad
3,078. I
percentage
mean,
for me.
for us, it wouldn't be bad. But then what it has done, it has kicked in a revised pilot program now that, they're saying that, listen, they're going to be implementing a pilot program that visa applicants are subject to bonds now, where there would be 5,000, 10,000, or 15,000, which will be generally be expected or required. I'm wondering if Guyanese are going to be, they definitely got to be rethinking going up to the US if you got to leave that level of bond in order for you to get your status to go up just to visit. And
Well,
it doesn't say that this bond is refundable.
well, I think that is yet to be determined how you pay and how you collecting back your money and all these different things. Because they might just keep that for a very lengthy period. It might be for the time of your visa until it expire. Who knows,
Yeah, it
right?
could be. Yeah, it could
So
be. It could be.
they could choose to do it however they please and
Yeah,
make it work for them. We as Guyanese need to understand, well, hey, we have something good here, and it could even be better as
yeah.
the future comes, right? But do you want to make that sacrifice? Some people might want to because they really and truly have nothing else going for them, right?
Or maybe it's not even nothing going for them. I think it's just their family members not being in Guyana. Because as you know, during certain periods in Guyana, a lot of people migrated out of the country. So
Well,
a lot of
that
people's
too.
families don't even live in Guyana anymore.
Correct. I mean,
Hmm.
America do holds a large, I would want to say the largest population of Guyanese. I would think America holds because I went to Minnesota the other day. I just
Yeah,
came back from there,
yeah,
and I was surprised to see at least well over 100 Guyanese at an event, you know,
yeah. That
supporting.
Jomo held
Yeah,
down the crowd. I gotta say that.
correct. And
Yeah,
as they call out, even the artists before and after him came and called out, which country you're from and rep your flags. And you see enough Guyanese out there. You understand?
yeah,
Even the
yeah,
boots that was there, the snack boots and the different boots that was there, it was
hmm,
Guyanese people. So
yeah,
to know that there's even a Guyana Day over there. So to know that we have so much people in different cities, I know there's a lot of people in Florida. There's a bunch in New York that, people usually hear about. But in
yeah.
the different parts of the world and the country, That
Well,
is amazing to have.
I know about Guyana Day in Florida. There's New York. There's New Jersey. Well, now we
At,
know about Minnesota. We know about
yeah,
Atlanta,
Atlanta have it.
right?
At this
Um,
point, I'd want to think anywhere Guyanese is, they got the Guyana Day.
well. I haven't heard about the Guyana Day in California or Sacramento or San Francisco, but I know Guyanese are down there as well because when I went down to those areas, I ran into people who were Guyanese, and I have Guyanese friends
Mhm.
who left New York and they're living in California as well. So
Well, keep in
they
mind they might would
they
have
might have that
integrated
huge
that
community.
into
Yeah,
yeah, they might would have integrated that into a Caribbean Day because everywhere do have a Caribbean Day.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
even in that, I see Guyanese is majority of the people they're taking over. You understand?
Well, on that note, I kind of wanted to go into because our thing is about the creative industries in Guyana, and now that this particular requirement is a pilot that's coming on board from the U.S. Embassy, I'm wondering how that is going to affect the creatives from Guyana, who especially, I mean, we first didn't have the issue of the working visas, which would be from the P1 to the P3. We didn't have those arrangements properly sorted out for our people as yet. Although, for example, Jamaica leads in that kind of arrangement for their creative artists and stuff like that to go to perform, whether it be in the UK, in the US. They have those arrangements in terms of the immigration aspect of it. They have that pat down. So I'm wondering, with this new requirement, especially with the whole bond coming in, where it will be between 5 to 15,000 US for this bond. How do we see ourselves really being able to export our artists with these kinds of regimes that are now popping up? Because um, I think the violation of the the time that you are given, because it is clearly said that, listen, you have up to 6 months. Once you travel to the US, you have up to 6 months. You've got to leave before the 6 months. You can't leave after. If you leave after, you've violated that time. All right. So, how do you think this is going to affect our artists, though? Because they haven't gotten even to the point of having as I said earlier, the P1 to the P3 visas arranged.
I don't see much being affected because
Whoa.
America's
I'm not hearing you.
business you're
I didn't
paying.
hear you that well, bro. I think you broke up for a minute there.
You better know?
Yeah, a little better now. Yeah.
I'm saying I don't think it's gonna affect that much because once you're applying for a business visa, you're coming to pay your taxes, and America's built on business, so they're expecting you to hold up your end and stay
Yeah.
in work as you're applying to come and do. Unlike the other one
Mhm.
that you're coming to conduct business but not do any financial transactions, right?
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
they will be able to benefit mainly from the business visa. So, and I think in the creative space, we should have been moving towards this direction years ago, right?
Yeah.
You should have
Hmm.
understand what type of visa you need. I know for sure in places like Trinidad and Barbados, if you're an artist, if you're a creator, even in Brazil, you
Hmm.
could be a vlogger, you could be an influencer, you're
Correct.
able to get a business visa because you're coming to do videos or content, as they would say, in
Yeah.
in America. So it's not
Correct.
even hard getting a business visa, really and truly. You just have to go through the right channels and do the right thing,
Hmm.
compared to being turned down for the regular B1, B2 and
Well, of course
overstaying your time.
of course, you realize now the submission for the application now to apply for the B1 B2 has gone up by $250.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's an additional cost with that 250, and then there's the additional cost now if you have to pay that bond, which will kick in August the 20th. All right. So
Mm-hmm.
once that pilot program kicks in, everybody who is even applying for a visa, they have to pay the increased fees for that. And then they would have to make sure they have that bond if they're not going there for a particular purpose. that will, of course, we know as an artist getting there, you have to go through the petition process, whether it's a P1 or a P3. So that
Yeah,
petition process, as we know, is pretty costly as well.
correct.
All right.
So
Those are,
I'm
yeah, go
waiting
ahead.
to see the details. I'm
Yeah.
waiting to see the details because I don't think it's gonna affect the business side of things. The business visa. It may affect the student visa, right? But not even that much because Trump is looking based on his regime. They're looking to, if you're coming to study and that is adding to the economy, they're looking to keep you, especially if you're in certain areas of expertise, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So that
Well,
is
well,
adding to the
well.
economy.
I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what. I think that even too is in question because that visa you're talking about is the H1, right? The
Hmm.
H1 visa, and based on the news, MSNBC and CNN, um, a lot of those visas, a lot of people were calling for those visas to be lessened as well because they were claiming that a lot of, let's say, Orientals or people from Japan, China, those are the people who use those to come in India as well and work in the technology field.
Correct. You see, the
So
problem with that and why they would crank down on it is once you come and gain the knowledge, you usually go back to your motherland. And that is the problem they have with the student visa. I know for sure, especially the Chinese and the Indians, they
yeah,
make use of that. And once they finish, they go back to their home country and work. So
and
it is
Bill.
not benefiting the economy. But I did
Hmm.
heard Trump said he's looking to, put things in place to keep people here. I,
Yeah.
I I realize also certain major companies would have shifted the way they do business, especially in
Hmm.
China, to producing stuff, especially places like Apple and so on, companies like Apple, and they
Yeah.
they open companies in places like India, right? So now the
Hmm.
market is shifting, relationships are being created differently
Yeah.
to accommodate and make sure the American ecosystem continues to flourish. So
Well, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
I, I,
looking
I
on to
feel,
see the breakdown of these information as they come out, of course, because we as
yeah,
Guyanese
because,
is going to be affected in several different areas.
and one of the things too that I'm also looking at, um, like earlier when I mentioned the creatives, because I saw President Jagdeo on a radio program a few days ago. I think it was a day ago, day before yesterday, and he was talking about this injection after the September the first elections. There's going to be a huge injection of capital into the creative sector, and I'm wondering um, if they're looking. I know they have mentioned partially in some of the information that has come out of their not delivered manifesto, but they've said that some of that information is what is in the manifesto. All right. Um, I'm wondering if they're gonna be taking a serious look at the IP issue. That's one. And the other aspect to that is that he mentioned the improvement of the local content bill. All right. And for years we have been calling for the update of the IP law issue and the enforcement, and also with the local content bill being improved. Because one of the things that a lot of people do not recognize, and but people talk about on social media, for example, is the whole Chinese influx of businesses in Guyana and stuff like that. But we also have to be cognizant that the Chinese just couldn't come in and take over a property and just set up a store. All right. A lot of these businesses that they get involved in, they are renting these businesses, and Guyanese are also part owners of those businesses. So they're benefiting from the Chinese having their business at those locations. All right. So I'm hoping, like the VP said, there's going to be a greater look at the local content bill. And I'm hoping that they extend that local content bill into, the whole protectionist aspect of it, which would deal with the IP law. Because we've
Yeah.
stated on several programs, not only on radio, but on this very program as well, the need for us to understand the IP law regime because it's going to be affecting us. For example, we have a set of companies from the US that wish to come in. And we know for a fact Wendy's is going to be launching in Guyana in a matter of days, right? And that's a franchise from the
Mm-hmm.
US, just like there's KFC, there is Churches, which is a New Orleans, the Cajun cooking and all of that. So as these companies come into our space, I am looking for that change in the direction in terms of how we're going to protect our content. Because I do think people are going to come in, and once they see something that they can capitalize on, because the we have we don't have a safety net for our creatives in Guyana, they're going to be able to take advantage of our creative industries and make money off of us and our ideas. Because, for example, if a lot of these companies that are coming in, we have special recipes in Guyana that have not been trademarked and patented or even copywritten. So what is going to happen is that a lot of these companies can come in, learn, and they could introduce new products in the market, or they could introduce new products across the world, but just source the raw materials from Guyana. That is a possibility as well.
I agree. And this is so I heard the vice president, just to clarify, you
Yeah.
mentioned president. President title nevertheless, but vice is there.
Oh, sorry.
I
Yeah,
heard
yeah,
him,
vice president.
we getting nieces go. Yeah,
Yeah,
I heard him mention a couple things on a radio interview the other day. And
yeah.
I thought all of that was great, but all of the stuff that you're speaking on have to intertwine with IP laws. And the fact that
Hmm.
we don't have any direct IP laws and enforcement to, well, mainly the enforcement to come and clamp down on things and put things into perspective the way it's
Yeah.
supposed to be is why we're suffering. We look at all the developments, but if it's not being protected, then of course Guyanese will continue to suffer. And you mentioned
Hmm.
the Local Content Act. That
Yeah.
should be expanded into the creative industry because you have to be creative to even come up with the Local Content Act.
Hmm.
You understand
Hmm.
me? So
Hmm.
the fact
But
that we're
as the Local Content Act is, it's just for the business protection, really. As it is now, it's just for business protection. It doesn't extend into, you know, what we want and what I think would benefit a lot of the creatives in Guyana. I think, I do think though that the government has to look at it now because of, for example, a lot of the youth have been saying, listen, um, we want to have different things happen. And at this stage in our development process, we've got to start looking at how we integrate a lot of the youthful thinking, a lot of the youthful ideas into the development process. And part of that development process is what we've been talking about, which is an entire new industry. All right. That entire new industry will help us to develop in a different way. In other words, we're talking about, and a lot of people tend to isolate what we're talking about just to music, but it's not just the music industry. It is, once we talk about the creatives, we're talking about writers, we're talking about designers, we're talking about producers, we're talking about models, because one of the things our young people don't take into consideration outside of just the music industry and saying we need stuff here. When you create a song, most of the time you have to do a video. In this modern world, we got to do a video to go along with it. And when you create that video, you have to have people in that video. You have to, if they're main characters in the video with the artist, or they are extras in that video. All right. A lot of people don't even recognize, for example, the models who model in a lot of the music videos, the girls, don't realize there's a specific regime that goes along with modeling in a music video, and you get paid per scene. All right. It's not just you get a one-off payment and that's it. There are certain things that are supposed to be signed, for example, the release forms that allows the person who is using the content to use your image and your likeness. This is some of the information that we insist that it's got to be part of the entire regime of how we set up things in Guyana. Um, Unfortunately, I don't know if Martin got cut off. Okay, he's back. But it is part of our entire regime that we need to have the IP law issue fixed, because that will then allow us to put the paperwork in place. So, for example, the models will benefit from they get paid per clip. And of course, there's not only paid per clip, but there is the royalties on that. Because the music video, once it's placed on YouTube, on any other platform, it's gonna be streaming and all of that. So they get paid from that once they are properly registered. So it's an entire industry, a whole new industry of things that can be developed in Guyana. And as the IMF has rightfully pointed out, Guyana is the country that is ripe for development and rapid growth. Um, we've got to be cognizant as Guyanese that in this particular dispensation that we're in, we have to project that image of development, because one, we have investors, major investors looking at coming to Guyana to invest. And also we have ourselves that we're hoping to have, more Guyanese at the top in business, not only in Guyana, but across the world.
Mm-hmm. So I
Yeah.
must apologize for popping off just now. I'm traveling,
Oh,
as
yeah.
you would know, Malachi. So the internet is not the best in the city where
Yeah.
I'm at.
Yeah. Yeah. I know.
But
But yeah.
you were mentioning a couple points there, and I think it's important that we need to pay attention to the change in that is happening not just in Guyana but around the world,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Everybody is looking to have the best country, live the best life,
Yeah.
have the best jobs and these sort of things. But the reality is the economy is crashing, not in America only, but across the world. The biggest and
And
brightest
Guyana.
countries is crashing,
Yeah, and Guyana is in like
right?
the most beautiful position, because the last report that came out from the US states that Guyana in on the entire globe is the only country that is poised and is totally food sufficient by itself.
Yes. Yeah. And
You
that
know.
is for several reasons. Because I thought about it. We're
Mhm.
only really and truly food sufficient because we have a little bit people. Imagine if we had all of our Guyanese on the land. It would have
Well,
been a little bit harder to feed
it,
everybody.
it yeah, it would have been a little harder to be a food sufficient nation. All right, but because
Hmm.
as you know, 83% of Guyana is still jungle. All right.
Yes.
So if we brought home that, I roughly estimate it was like 2.7 million Guyanese, because if you have Guyanese in the UK, you got a portion of Guyanese in the US, you have Guyanese scattered across the entire Caribbean, you have Guyanese even as far as Africa, you have Guyanese in Brazil, you had Guyanese in Venezuela, because all of them haven't remigrated to Guyana because Venezuela's economy has crashed. All right. So you have Guyanese all over the world. And if we had more of a scheme to have them return, and this is one of the things we spoke about in private, which, we are hoping that is part of the strategy of whichever government gets into place, which would be to offer certain things to bring skilled individuals who are Guyanese back home. Because I'm hearing a lot of, let's say, rallies, um, talks about policies, but we haven't heard. And the only thing that kind of pointed to the migrants coming home and being able to access certain things was when the vice president was on that radio program, and he was saying that they're going to be introducing, after the elections, they'll be introducing a new form of ID card, which would be more of a biometric ID card, where we'll be able to identify all the persons who are Guyanese, and anybody else who's coming in as a resident and stuff like that, they would not be able to access that card, which will allow them to swipe when they're coming in at the airport as a resident of Guyana, which would be easier for Guyanese to just go out, and when they're coming in, they don't have to stand in a line. They just swipe their card and they move. For example, if you need medical services, you can also go to the hospital. If you go to the hospital, you can just swipe. They know that you are a Guyanese. That service is provided to you for free. But non-nationals or even nationals who are living here who are not originally Guyanese, they have to pay. Which I think, I mean, we're not being xenophobic here, but I know that we're in the process of building. So we have to understand as a nation that, hey, there are certain things that, Guyanese will be able to access, and people who are just coming in, because even in the US, visitors can't access certain services in the US. It's got to be like, what, near death? Maybe if you're in an accident where you're probably injured and you're going to die.
Yeah. So I think to the healthcare, you're able to go to the emergency room, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't turn down anybody from emergency, but you also during that process, you also do need to provide your card, your insurance card. And if you
Yeah.
don't have one, then you'll be billed accordingly. And that is a
Yeah.
hefty fine to have, right? I know if anybody ever had a mistaken bill came to the house with your
Mm-hmm.
your insurance card, but they was able to still send you a bill instead of sending it to the insurance company. And
Yeah.
if you check the bills on that, the totals, for
Yeah.
simple dental, I remember years ago, I had to pay a sum of 11,000 something. The total was, and I was like, "Yeah, I can keep me two teeth in me mouth. Me need the cavity filled that bad, right?" But I
11,000
had
is with you do
insurance.
dental work you get.
Yeah, I had
Yeah.
insurance, and I only paid, I think, like 800 out of pocket, as copay, and
Yeah.
that is a major difference. And I still never went back and got all the work I was supposed to get done because I wasn't going to go through that either. Because
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
money coming out to somebody from somehow, right?
Yeah.
The bill is
Mhm.
11,000 no matter how you look and twist and turn it.
Mhm. Mhm. Well,
So
now when you mention that though, don't you think that that should be more like the implemented strategy in Guyana? For example, all Guyanese should have that card, and when they have that new biometric ID card, that instead of, let's say, the hand, people will call it a handout. All right,
mhm.
outside of just giving you the 100,000, what about implementing a system where, for example, dental, eyes, ears, that kind of stuff you can readily access. I mean, I think more focus should be on healthcare, which I know the government is doing because with the opening of 12 new hospitals regionally across the country, that's a lot. My question was always, how are we going to staff those hospitals? You know,
Mhm.
but in terms of the whole idea of the biometrics and stuff like that, this is where the idea to me would come in that, listen, let's improve certain things that Guyanese can definitely get, which we know would be like dental, eye care, and ear care. I
Yes.
think those
So
things would relieve a lot of pressure for Guyanese.
I think each ministry should have their own card, right? Just to make it complicated and make it a little bit difficult that you can't just mass produce it for every and anybody because we know how the system goes, strictly
Well,
government wise to the population.
I know, but with biometric cards that are linked to a lot of your information, I don't think you'll be able to copy those at all,
Yeah,
because
brother. It's
biometrics would have,
black hacking.
well,
The hackers
somebody
are
could hack.
able to hack the government in America. I'm sure they'll be able to wipe out the system in Guyana. Because
Well,
we're not up to date with certain things.
no, but if you do the biometrics, which would include fingerprinting, which would be in a hologram in the card, that's really difficult for somebody to copy and have it on multiple cards, because then you remember if you swipe
No, but
one
see,
card
that's the thing.
and it has
You don't
a
need to have
register.
it on multiple card. You just need to have a card, right? So, for instance, remember,
Mm,
because everything is digital, I could scan my fingerprint through a digital system and just place that on the new card that I'm making for somebody else, right? Let's say I'm making a new card for me, right? I'm the hacker. I could scan
Okay.
my fingerprint, place it in there, have everything digitally, and then still have ability to print the card like everybody else do, because it's not hard to print the card.
But if it's biometric, this is what I'm saying. It's going to create a problem. This is why. Because if somebody, if you have two cards in the system that are the same, and one person is using, let's say one person is using the card in Georgetown and the other person is using the card in Linden, because it's a biometric system that will be linked to a database, that hacker got to be really good because it's going to show up and it couldn't be the same individual in two places at the same time.
No, but
All
it's
right?
never gonna
It's
be.
going to show up.
So from my understanding of how that is going to work, the hacking part, because I do have a little bit of knowledge, right, on it. So I think
Yeah.
it's easy to have access. You only need to hack the digital framework of the ministry, right? So let's say they have a numbering system of 1 to 100,000 or 800,000. I just need
Mhm.
to have one access of that numbering system that is not it that haven't been used yet, because you're going to be able to see all of that, right? Let's say
Mhm.
Tom, Jerry, Jones, everybody, you're going to be able to see everybody information. You're going to see which number system is still available, and you just have to select that or a couple hundred of that, and then
Mhm.
everybody prints, because remember it's a digital footprint you're creating. You're not looking to rob the system, you're just looking to joke the system, right?
Yeah.
Rob is
Yeah.
taking away, joking is just adding into it to make sure you have access to it at any given time, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
I
well,
do know
I
technology is
know we know technology is hackable. That's no doubt
yeah.
about it. But we're also hoping that whichever company they hire to put these processes to make these things go on happen, that we're not gonna have, and those kind of intrusions would have to be from people who are not real, people who live in Guyana, because we are not Guyanese who just be hacking. We more concerned about the day-to-day living, how we
Correct.
going to be able to
And
access certain things.
that is where the
Uh,
business of things, comes in, because we do
yeah,
know it is going to happen. This is what, of course, we have to safeguard ourselves against it and put things in
yeah,
place, but it's going to happen at some point in time. We've seen it with the banking
of course,
system and
of course.
everything
I
else,
mean, we
right?
saw it. We saw it. What was it? 2 years ago or a year ago when the whole Microsoft system went down. I was
Mm-hmm.
traveling to Sacramento at that time, and we had to hold over because none of the airport equipment computers were working, so we couldn't see the flight. You couldn't
Mm.
get the flight data, so everything was kind of like in limbo for a few hours.
And those are the
Uh,
major companies.
yeah, yep, yep.
So
So
I
go
say
ahead.
all of that to say our system should, this is where I said it should be, every ministry should have their own different card on the system, right? So
Mm,
healthcare card should be different. Your eye card should be different from your dental, should be different from your general health and everything else in between, right?
well, I
Because
was thinking that the national insurance scheme card should be the one that covers your health, and
mm,
your ID card is separate because your ID just identifies who you are.
I wouldn't even trust the national insurance to cover that, brother. I would
Mhm.
rather a joint venture between a private company, because
I
remember
think
the thing with that too is we're going to push our system into becoming like America, where we have this whole big healthcare industry, and really and truly it have nothing to do with healthcare. We have the big insurance company, and it's robbing people, and we're not being able to benefit correctly, right? So if we're doing a
Mhm.
free healthcare system, that should come directly from the ministries. Let's say each ministry give you a card, and that would be joined with the different hospitals would have access to that, right? The By having the NIS system now, you kind of have to. I would have rather, me, this is my opinion, provide a couple different
Yeah.
cards. If you're going to health, make sure you have your insurance up to date. Make sure you have your ministry of your eye card up to date with whichever hospital or whichever clinic or wherever you're going to do that. Vice versa for
Mhm.
every other thing going down.
So that means,
Compared,
for
because if
example,
I'm
if you
going
go
to
to
do
the
my eyes,
hospital,
I just want to do my eyes.
so that means every hospital would be
Mhm.
scanning two cards at one time. So if you go to the hospital to deal with your dental, that's one card, which would be connected to your insurance. and the next card would be your ID, which would validate that who you say you are, you are. That kind of thing you're talking about.
Then you're gonna have a private company come in, which they would have to grant permission, but they can't really stop it. It's a private company coming into the country and
Mhm.
implementing the same exact system and working with private hospitals. Again, they
Yeah.
cannot really stop it, right? And then we're
Mhm.
gonna have, like, we have Naliko Nafico, we have different insurance agencies that people are now paying for, even though we
Yeah.
have free healthcare.
Yeah.
So we don't want these major private companies to become this monopoly over the system that the government
Mhm.
have no control over it. Now there would never be any free healthcare.
Well, that's the thing again. And I like that idea because I think we like you rightfully mentioned, there should be a lot more government private partnerships to make a lot of these stuff come to fruition or come
Correct.
into being. But of
So,
course, we got to put those checks and balances in place to ensure, again, like the
mhm,
population don't get
mhm.
robbed based on these schemes,
Yeah.
because it
So
happens in major metropolitan countries.
imagine building 12 new hospitals that is fully accessible to the public,
Mhm,
and we still have private hospitals, that
mhm.
major private hospitals that we're gonna kind of putting them out of business, but they now need to specialize in certain areas while the
Exactly.
public
Yeah.
hospitals be generalized.
Yeah. Yeah. That I do believe that, for example, we should have had, for example, I know they've mentioned specialized hospitals, but um, heart surgeries has been done in Guyana at the public hospital. Kudos to the GPH for that. Brain surgery as well. But we still have to have other specialized areas. For example, um, children who are born with hydrocephalus, which is too much brain fluid that can then increase when that child is born. And you notice they have some cases where, and I saw a lady on Regent Street, just down at the bottom there at City Hall, with a child, and the child's head is elongated and quite big, right?
Yes, I've
And
seen.
yeah, and I don't know if she knows that's hydrocephalus, and she's supposed to really go. They're supposed to have a specialized, if not a hospital for that, which I heard the vice president say they're going to have a children's hospital that actually looks like a hotel. It's already built. All right.
Mhm.
But in those hospitals, like for example, Shriners and the other one in the US that specialize in dealing with just children. All right. Um, it is good for us to have moved into that sector now where we will have specialists working out of these hospitals to deal with
Yeah.
situations like that. And
Yes.
that I think would really boost our, because in some countries there's actually what is called health tourism, where people leave from their home countries and go to other places because getting the health care they need is way cheaper in those countries. And I think Guyana has the
Mhm.
ability to offer those kind of things. For example, dental is cheaper than in Guyana than in the US. That's for sure.
Trust me, far cheaper. It's
um,
free.
it's far cheaper. Well, we haven't really gone into you know uh what they call the replacements of the entire mouth, or when they replace everything, they do the entire root canal, they take out all your originals, they make copies of them, and then they put them back.
I think we've done that. Didn't Doggy did that in Guyana? I
No, no,
think
no,
he
I
done
I
that
don't think
in
he did
Guyana.
that. No, he did that up there. He
Okay.
did that both, and what's her name did hers up there as well. But I'm hoping that those this is what I'm talking about in terms of speciality. I'm hoping that these
Mhm.
services fully come to Guyana, because one, we have elderly people in Guyana who would have problems with their dental. Um,
Yes.
and
Still
and
want the
and we
bright
know
smile.
everybody, the whole world, yeah, the whole world giving up dentures. Nobody ain't got time for dentures. You understand? People are more
Yeah.
focused on implants. All right, so to look natural. So those are areas that I do believe that Guyana has potential to expand those particular areas, and to create an industry where people come in, not only from North America, but from the Caribbean to seek medical help. Guyana has the potential for that. Um, I'm hoping also that we can offset the issue of the doctors and the nurses, because we saw this advertising in the papers for um, Indian nurses to come to Guyana, right? And the VP kind of cleared it up and made it quite clear. Listen, we're not. What we are looking to do is to ensure that we hire the best qualified people to deal with the population, because we don't want a quack, or we don't want somebody who is just a mediocre doctor or a dentist or eye specialist to come in and work on our people. I mean, that would be a disaster for Guyana, for us to go through that. So that was one of the things that I think was great that the vice president pointed out in his discussion on radio, that, hey, we need to hire the best. And I think Guyanese need to get into that mode as well. Um, we don't need to appear too xenophobic, although xenophobia is not bad. It's not totally a bad thing, but it it has the ability, if we use it in the wrong way, to set our country back. And I'll give you an idea of what I'm talking about when I say xenophobia. Um, we went when I traveled to Africa, to Botswana. Um, that was one of the places that, there's a bit of xenophobia, where if you get into that space, and it happens in Africa, in South Africa, in Zimbabwe, in Botswana, there's a bit of xenophobia where um, the Africans there think you're coming there to kind of lord over them, and you're coming there to be this imposing type on them. It's the same idea that Guyanese have when people come into our space as well. But we have to understand that what we need to do is, we're seeking the best for Guyana, in terms of, especially when it comes to the hospitals and the doctors. I do believe that the government needs to do a little bit more in their second term when they get in terms of reaching out to specialists who are Guyanese and offer them the positions to come home first, and give them some incentives, because I do believe incentives will drive people to come home, because a lot of people don't want to have to work 2 3 jobs in a metropolitan country, in England, in the US, and they would prefer to just come home. I mean, if they were able to access the same amenities that they're able to access in those places, they would prefer to come home. Because one of the things I saw on social media is that there was a producer from the Bahamas that, he was on a green card. I think it was for 20 years. And his green card is about to expire in October of this year. And he got a letter saying that if it expires, of course, he's going to be picked up and deported by ICE. So it's advised for him to come in and start the process if he wants to renew it or anything like that. And he said, listen, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go home. And he made up his mind to pack up his stuff. He packed up his stuff. He sent out his stuff at home, and he left the US. And it's not even October as yet,
Um,
So he left and he went back home.
of course, there's major sacrifice to be made, you
Yeah.
know, in and decision making when you're doing certain things. Because I did mention earlier, not just America, but the entire global economy is collapsing. And
Yeah.
if you're not in the right position to benefit, and not just collapsing financially, but in every way, shape, and form, right? Because we're losing, especially with the major developments with AI today,
Mm-hmm.
the amount of things that you could have a new girlfriend, a boyfriend, a wife, a husband, a assistant for business. You could make your children now with AIs. So there's so much things that the human being is falling short of already, right? And if we
Mhm.
don't pay attention, we can be the minority.
But check this out. One of the tech giants, I think one of their CEOs of one of the tech giants, and I've heard Elon Musk say this as well. Elon Musk has said that they need to keep a rein on the AI process, and just ensure that it's more of a response to commands more than it being a learning by itself, autonomy. All right. Because obviously, if you make it autonomous and it's learning independently, it's going to want to be free of that demand or people saying,
Mhm.
this is what I want you to do. This is what I want you to do. All right. So if you create it to have autonomy, which is to operate on its own, at some point in time, it's going to wake up because
Correct.
it's
Just like
drawing
we do.
information. Exactly. It's drawing information from the global mindset. All right. And this kind of like it points to like a subconscious that we have created. All right. Because of course the AI is going to be reaching into and learning from several different countries. It's going to learn language, it's going to learn habits, it's going to learn culture, it's going to learn the music, it's going to learn people's writings, it's going to learn people's speech patterns. So
Well,
at
I
some
think it
point,
from what I've seen, it would have learned everything else already except the habits. The part that keeps us kind of human,
yeah,
how
yeah.
we do things, why we do things. I from what I've seen, because I've been doing some research, and most of my business now have moved into technology and AI.
Yeah, yeah.
Because
Hmm.
broadcasting just now, I want to be able to tap a screen from anywhere, like, oh, the internet giving me problem tonight. I must be able to stay connected at all times, right? So there's
Yeah,
different
yeah,
ways that
yeah.
we could change things. You mentioned the working of multiple jobs just not too long, and I noticed somebody spoke on that
Hmm.
in Guyana, right? And the article reads, the headline reads, "Nothing wrong with working multiple jobs to support lifestyle change. Growing
Hmm.
economy, former PSC chair," right?
Yeah.
And of course, there's major pushback on that. I too commented on it because why would I
Mhm.
be in Guyana and want to work two jobs, three jobs, right?
Well, the thing
He
is, go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, he would have mentioned, and that is the former chairman for the private sector commission, right?
Hmm.
Kamal
Yeah.
Singh.
Hmm.
So he would have been comparing living in America, New York, specifically, and
Yeah.
coming over here working two, three jobs to survive, right?
Hmm.
Versus
Yeah.
being in Guyana, not working at all, or working one job and you're complaining, right?
Yeah.
Now,
Hmm.
my personal take on that is total bull, right? As I mentioned,
Hmm.
why would I want to work two, three jobs in Guyana? The
Hmm.
first, and why I say that is the same national insurance scheme today is not set up to accommodate something like that. And this is from experience. Because when I go
Hmm.
and I sign up and I say, hey, I got one company, here I got the second company, here I got the third company, they look at me like, what the hell you doing? Right? They're
Hmm.
taking all of the money that they say have to pay in because each company have different functions. So they're
Yeah.
saying that I have to pay money based on what I make,
Hmm.
right? Into my
Yeah.
insurance scheme. And I'm like, well, you don't even have the metadata system to accommodate this payment, right?
Hmm.
Much less for me to, why would I even pay my money into you, right? I
Well, yeah.
understand the GRA system, the tax system having that, right? To
Hmm.
pay on what you earn system, that
Yeah.
is
PAYE.
understandable,
Hmm.
right? But the NIS system or any other system that is not readily established to accommodate this, you can't tell people though. That is not
But but
far
but
off
but
from.
but
Go
just
ahead.
on what you're saying, right? I do believe if they centralize, well, it couldn't be in one area only. I mean, you have to duplicate it. But if they were able to, for example, create the database for GRA, for the national insurance scheme, for the ID card system, for the immigration system, for the police, and they were all integrated, all right, I think that will make the tracking easier in terms of the multiple jobs, all right. And
Correct.
on the same aspect of the multiple jobs, we Guyanese will leave Guyana where they were working one job, they were teaching, for example, right? And they will go to the US, they will teach, and they will also do another job. Let's say two
Mm-hmm.
jobs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they are trying to live a certain standard of life in the US. Now, when they come back to Guyana, um, and to your very point, going to what the is it the business the
Yes.
person from the business bureau said, right? Now, when it comes to that, I I I want to say that to me nothing is wrong. I don't think three is a little out of the way for Guyana. Three is a lot. Not unless you're working a really short 4 hour with one, 4 hour with another, that kind of thing. Because one of the things we've seen, and I know about this as well, other people outside of Guyanese work 14 hours a day. All right. I've seen individuals work 14 hours a day um, to make money, basically to make money. And when we say 2 or 3 jobs, I would push it to two in Guyana. It's really not to pay bills, but to be able to accumulate a sum that you want to do something with. For example, you want to remodel your house. All right.
Correct.
Um, your salary at that point mightn't be able to do that. But now that we've got, like the VP mentioned, they're going to be introducing the 0% loans through a new bank they're going to be introducing. We we we're going to be at such a level if all of this stuff happens the way it's said. We're going to be at such a level that I don't think any Guyanese really needs to. It's like what happened in Dubai. Um, a lot of the people there at 18 years old, there's a certain amount of money that is put into a bank account for them. They are given certain privileges and certain things and grants that help them to whether grow a small business, to expand their existing business, all of that. So we have such a small population on the ground presently in Guyana, all right, that I think 3 jobs is pushing it, but I do think 2 jobs can be a possibility because of how fast we are growing and the productivity level that people would want to say, okay, I got my house, I got my car, all right, I'm paying on both of these things. When that's finished, well, I want another property. But you remember, you've got to build up a capital because you got to have something in the bank for you to go for another loan. All right. So it may not be something that you're saying that they got to have to 2, 3 jobs for 40, 50 years, but they may want to have 2 or 3 jobs for, let's say, a 5 year period so they could build up a capital. They want to refurbish a house so that they can rent that out as an Airbnb. They want to take a plot of land that they have and they want to build a bakery on that. They want to build a small factory on that. So from that perspective, I'm looking at it because Guyanese are not the type of individuals who can play they work in 40 years, which we've seen Mexicans do, we've seen Latinos do, we see Italians do, we've even seen white people do this. 40 years working 2, 3 jobs. That's a long time.
But
And this is because
we not built like that.
we're not built like that at all. Guyana is not built like that yet. And to accomplish that kind of, that drive, I mean, we see Brazilians and Venezuelans come over and you see them work construction during the day, and in the afternoon they're working on the roads. And
Correct.
this is stuff
But
I
even
have
even to
personally.
that,
Yeah,
this is where we have to fix the system, because in America, like you mentioned, you could go and work a 4 hour job or a 6 hours job or 8 hour job,
yeah,
but you do not go past the 8 hour job, right? So in Guyana, you're working 8 hours and 12 hours. I think that is where our problem comes in because
Well, I'll tell you one of the things too, Martin, when it comes to the 12 and the 14. Guyanese businesses are saying that they're losing money to the Chinese. But this is what I just mentioned earlier. The Chinese are willing to open their doors at 7 in the morning and close maybe late at night. While the
nine
Guyanese
at
business,
night.
exactly, the Guyanese business close off at what, 6, 7 o'clock?
Correct.
I mean, you could
But
if you go to Georgetown now and you try to get into City Mall, it's closed. It's closed since 5:36.
mhm, the
Yeah.
problem with that, brother, is we don't really have access to capital like they do. So if I'm running my business and majority of my business runs 24/7, right? And
Hmm.
if you're in entrepreneur or business person, you know this. It is
Yeah.
very different to run your own business. And I think most Guyanese would rather run their own business compared to
Mhm.
working for anybody for 12 hours. Because this is
Yeah.
the problem we have in the private sector, in the public sector, sorry, whereby
Mhm.
you can go to work as a security and then you ain't got nothing else to do, right? Because you're so
Yeah.
tired, because
Mhm.
it's hard to work 12-hour shifts. I've tried it before. I would
Yeah.
have worked 3 jobs in America, but I work 3 jobs on project base, whereby when I complete a 4-hour project or a 6-hour project, I get a bulk of money compared to
Yeah. But
working 12 hours for the regular wages. We ain't gonna wind up, and nobody really go for that in America either. This is why,
well,
for
one of the
instance,
things that I
they work
love,
a nursing job for six
yeah,
hours, 8 hours, and then double up, right?
yeah.
Compared to working as a nursing, then a security, it
But,
don't go
but,
like
but,
that.
but you know, the American taxation system is absolutely brutal when it comes to that. As a matter of fact, the harder you work and the more money you make, the heavier the taxes are. I
Exactly.
mean, I've looked at the system. I mean, I haven't worked in the U.S. outside of going to organize business meetings, conferences, lectures, stuff like that, which I do. But outside of that, I have people like, for example, my brother who works with the city and does Uber and does all the stuff. You understand? It's the environment just keeps you, if you want to live a certain standard, all right, it keeps you at a very fast pace, and that I
Correct.
believe is what is being, it as Guyana progresses in this, especially in this trajectory that we're going in, it's forcing individuals to say, listen, I don't want to get involved with any criminal activity. I don't want to do certain things. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to find myself maybe 2 jobs. When I'm finished this one, I can
Mm,
go over to this one, if it may be security or whatever, and I can stay there for a 6 hours after that, after working whole day, and I'm able to make some money. But like you pointed out, the GRA is set up to handle that. But in terms of the national insurance scheme, and what was the problem exactly in terms of the national insurance scheme that you saw, that they were not prepared for that level of people working 2 jobs and stuff like that?
I tried to partner with two of my close friends, right?
Hmm.
And they
Yeah.
work public jobs. So already they're contributing to their taxes and their insurance by
Yeah.
the government. But when they go and put their names on the private tax, they automatically had a problem there because it is not set up to work public and private. It is one is,
Go back. You
right?
just
And
broke.
then
It's not. It's not what?
so it is not set up for you to work public and private at the same time, right? So if you
Oh,
have a
it's not
government
set up
job,
for you to work public and private at the same time.
right, right? So automatically we
Mhm.
can't look into 2 jobs. That is our first problem. Then the payment. How do you then determine? They don't have a system for you to determine. Okay, so since you have 2 jobs, we're gonna take half of the money from here. Let's say you're paying $7,000 a month with your public
Yeah.
job, and
Mhm.
with a private job you have to pay about $10,000. determine, okay, we're going to take half from here and the other half from the actual amount that you have to pay into your system. They would
But
rather take both money.
it's gonna hit you hard, especially when you have to pay as you earn.
So it is preferred to pay as you earn. They
Mhm.
just need to have that system in place to say, well, okay, if we pay 7,000 here, right, then half of that 7,000 as a private, even if you have a shop, you're supposed to be able to pay half.
Mhm. And then how does that benefit you over time, though, in terms of being able to recoup? I think Martin is having some issues again with the internet this evening.
Yeah, the
Um,
internet dropped there for a second.
yeah. But those are some of the things that I'm hoping that the government, you know, um, talks about more, because those are like more streamlining activities for the future, as the vice president has mentioned. But just before, because time is running, and we really planned a really short program tonight. Shout out to Selector Sherwin. He's the missing man in the action team here tonight. But we hope he will have
Mm.
him soon. Back to how all of this stuff works. I'm hoping that the government in the new dispensation, in the new government that's coming up after election September the 1st, that we have a greater look at, again, the creative industries, how we inject the necessary things into that to stimulate it, to make it work. um, the updating of the laws and the enforcement of those laws are very critical to Guyana's
Mm-hmm.
development, because, as the president mentioned when we spoke to him in New York, he said, listen, we have to look at IP law, because medicine is coming from the forestry of Guyana. A lot is coming out of Guyana that we need to have protection over. We know for a fact there are several private companies that have taken stuff from Guyana that really authentically belongs to Guyana. And the other day, we saw Banks DIH put up on a Facebook post that they're not
Yeah,
associated.
complaining.
Right, they're complaining about a company that has created a product very similar, um, and they're disassociating themselves from that product, and they're letting Guyanese know that that product
It
has
don't
nothing
even
to do.
taste the same. I tried it. It
Well,
don't even taste the same.
well, I mean, this is what we talk about when we constantly, keep talking about the IP law issue. I mean, if we know pepper pot is being used by a company in the US, this and they're using a positioning statement that says Guyanese inspired pepper pot. All right. And when we
Mm-hmm.
look at the ingredients and the contents at the back, we know that's absolute trash. That is not what we eat in Guyana as pepper pot.
This
That's
is not
not the
broccoli
ingredients.
inspired.
Now, you could imagine if that very company invests millions of dollars in securing the recipe for pepper pot. We definitely
I
have a
telling you.
problem. All right. If a company, for example, we know cheese straw done gone. Cheese straw is in a box, nicely
Mm,
packaged, and you know,
ready
nice to
made.
the eye.
That too
Go
don't
ahead.
taste the same. And that is our problem we'll continue to face until we put things in place. Not just in the creative sector, but in every areas of business that we have. Because who's in somebody with some money to say, oh, I'm clamping on us, all right, over here. And it is just that people haven't been that greedy yet and paying attention to Guyana. But the moment they do decide, hey, let me stop from this nation, then we stand to lose. And that's everybody, every citizen of Guyana stand to
Well,
lose.
you can't say they ain't greedy yet, because We what was the last statistics on visitors for 2026? It should be about 3.5 million people coming to Guyana. So some company is gonna come in for sure that understands the lack of IP law in Guyana, and they're gonna capitalize on that. And before that happens, I'm really, really hoping that the government listens to what we've been talking about, which is we call it our mantra. All right. We're hoping that they pay attention to this particular issue, not not only after elections, but in the run up to elections, because it's so serious, the updating and the enforcement of the IP law issue, that if we don't look at it, we stand to lose a lot of products that were originally Guyanese inspired concept ideas, which can make a big impact in the world, can make millions of dollars for the people who came up with those ideas in Guyana and for the people who use them. So we don't want to be in a position where we lose a lot of our intellectual property, because for those people who don't know, when I just use the acronym IP, it means our intellectual property, and we've got to look at it holistically now, because as an emerging economy, as an economy that has, I think for the first quarter of the year we had 1 million visitors to Guyana, during that period. So we got to look at these issues and say, listen, we have to enforce and we have to update. All right. And a lot of this problem with the whole IP issue started in 1974, like I had mentioned on several occasions, even to what we classify as a national song. I did the research on, for example, This Land Is My Land, and I have on several occasions pointed out the fact that This Land Is My Land is not a Guyanese song. It's a song that was written by an American artist by the name of Rudy Guthrie. It was released in 1945. Has absolutely nothing to do with Guyana. But during the period when Guyana was removed from the Bern and Paris Accord in 1974 by the previous President Forbes Burnham, there was plagiarism of music. And in that plagiarism, a lot of the songs were rewritten to appear as though they are national songs, which they were not national songs. All right. So these are some of the issues that we we must address these issues. And I know the present government has mentioned not only on their interviews and on their rallies, but they have put the whole issue of culture and IP as part of their manifesto. And I haven't seen that from a lot of the other parties. Although I saw I don't know if it was an interview or a statement by one of the members of the Win Party. I think his name is Dr. France, where he said that no, if they took information from anybody else's manifesto, there is nothing that can happen or nothing that they can say to represent that this idea was an original idea from them, because, of course, there is no IP law. And I'm wondering if, when people look at that, if they fully understand the implications of not having updated IP laws in a country and also going to elections. All right. Because as you can see, when he mentioned the fact that, listen, we can take ideas from anybody else's manifesto and add that to ours and say that's ours, that clearly shows the breakdown in the whole protectionist law in Guyana. Because really, coming up with a manifesto, it comes from somebody's idea and research and thought. And again, IP means everything coming from the mind. So if you have, for example, a doctor that will come out and say, hey, there's no protectionist law, so we're able to steal from anybody, that should be a serious wake-up call to any government that, listen, we've got to zoom in on this IP law issue. Because if we come up with ideas and they're not protected and people can just pick them up and use them, and we can possibly lose them, what's happening? And this goes across the board. I mean, we have companies that create jams, chutneys, all these things that are created in Guyana that need to be protected. And when I say protected, not protected from the people who actually use the products in Guyana, but for companies that can then come in, get the raw materials from Guyana or other countries, and they can then mass produce the very product, which would then kill our business in Guyana. Because, for example, Guyana at one point in time had plantain chips. On every corner, a vendor would be selling plantain chips. But what we did not capitalize on was having the groves of plantain. We didn't think about having our plantain with a processing plant that can dry, cut, and package the plantain. So now we have plantain chips and stuff being imported from Trinidad and Tobago, when Guyana really should have capitalized on that niche, because one, we have the land to plant more plantain than I think anybody, based on our topography and the amount of land. 83% of the land is just jungle. We're not planning to cut down the jungle, because one of the things that happens with our jungle is that Guyana is the only country that has managed to turn the jungle into money, right? Which is the low carbon emission thing, where we get money from a lot of the European countries for saving the jungle. So we got to think seriously in how we are developing. And I do wish that a lot of the political parties that are in the fray, I mean, I've listened to what the PPP, which is the ruling government in Guyana, what their proposals are, but I have not seen a real development policy from a lot of the other parties. All we're seeing is basically a lot of the same rhetoric, or just a copy. For example, the ruling government came out with the whole grant system and stuff like that. And all we're seeing is, for example, the other smaller parties are saying, oh, well, they're promising 100, we'll take it up to 250. The child grant is 55,000, we'll increase that to 70. So I'm like, it's the same thing, just an addition to the same thing. So again, I'm hoping to see new policy, something that is totally out the box from the other parties, which we haven't seen as yet. And we're talking about under a month to go for elections. Certain parties have not fully released a full manifesto. And I'm thinking that, the voting population of Guyana is being cheated here, because we need to have these manifestos. And I do think that GCOM needs to, of course, update the rules. I've heard Claudette Singh say that, they're going to be looking at the rules. But one of the things they have to look at is they have to say, listen, when we announce the elections, there's a certain period of time that every party not only submit their list, but they're also supposed to have their manifesto ready at a certain date for that to be out for the general public. Because 1 month into it, and we don't see full manifestos, not even online or in hard copy, that people can sit down and read and get a better idea of what these political parties are offering. Because that, to me, is the most critical thing moving forward. Because if we want to have proper governance and proper oversight, we have to see what your programs are, and then people can say, okay, you know what, we'll have a body specially dedicated to looking. For example, in the US, there are bodies specially created. Watchdogs agencies are created to look at, a lot of these policies and how it affects people, and they can call it out if it's not working efficiently for the population. Those are some of the things that we need also to implement in Guyana. We need to have credible watchdog agencies that pay attention to government, that pay attention to parliament, that pay attention to the also the judiciary, because we know for a fact, and this is something that a lot of Guyanese don't want to talk about. A lot of Guyanese have been stiffed by lawyers, but who do you complain to? I mean, the police have, I don't think it's existing anymore or functioning at that level, which is the Police Complaint Authority. I knew that was in place at one point in time. But you need to have several of these watchdog bodies to keep a check and balance, especially on these institutions where a lot of power runs through, especially the judiciary. You have lawyers who will stiff their clients. And when I say stiff the client, they don't want to go through the battle. So they will collect your money, not function in the way that they are paid to function. You will lose the case, and there is no regress for you. There is no complaint. There is nothing that you can do to say, listen, I do believe I could have won my case, but my lawyer just collected my money and really didn't do anything. But because we are such a polarized society and such a small society, a lot of people just do not come out and say, listen, this has happened to me. And I know this as a fact. It happens. Even in a lot of cases where, for example, if we look at the Adriana Young case, all right, if we look at that case, where you have, obviously, you had a false report made by the police regarding the girl leaving the hotel and going in a vehicle. All right. Now, you have to have a watchdog body that keeps that in check. So, if a police officer is involved in that, he is supposed to be not on what they call close arrest. He's supposed to be put on leave with no pay until he is proven innocent of that particular situation, because that created a major incident in Guyana where there was burning and looting and all of that. I'm not saying that that should have happened, but certain elements of society seized the opportunity because of the uncertainty and the volatility of that particular case, and they decided to turn it into a political opportunity, and then decided, okay, it's going to degenerate into burning and looting and all that kind of stuff. So we definitely have to look at we have to look at creating watchdog agencies to keep power structures in check. All right. And of course, those people who have power have to be held responsible. Because, for example, when people talk about the spate of blackouts in Guyana, one of the things they don't understand is that I sat in Parliament and looked at a particular session in Parliament where the opposition cut the budget for the Amila Falls, which would have given Guyanese basically free power, because the Amila Falls was a hydro plant that was going to be running on the running water that we have in Guyana, because as you know, Guyana is what is called the land of many waters. So the opposition cut that particular plan of having the Amila Falls out of the budget. And that created a situation now where we're in a position where those diesel power plants and stuff that we have in Guyana, those things are obsolete outside of Guyana because nobody runs on that anymore. All right. And if we're going to be a growing economy, an emerging economy, obviously we're going to have a power supply that is constant. We can't run on power generations, these little plants using diesel or gasoline. We couldn't possibly think about that because it's going to shut down. We have to have a grid that is able to sustain factories, that is able to sustain manufacturing, that is able to sustain hotels, casinos, clubs, all of this kind of infrastructure that's coming into Guyana. And that's going to be pulling on the grid. So if you
You
have
know,
go ahead, Martin.
we have so much resources
Ooh,
But
breaking
we
up here a little bit, bro. You may have to restart. You're going. You just broke up.
So I was saying it is amazing how we have so much resources, the land of many waters, but we're yet not able to have use of that water to extract and both.
Yeah, yeah, and this is what we're saying. The opposition is supposed to be held accountable for that kind of nonsense because they're denying the Guyanese people that level of efficiency where we wouldn't have had a spate of blackouts or we wouldn't have to bring in a barge to help to power the national grid.
Correct, but even I, we do need a watchdog system, somewhat of a legal system to hold them accountable with also because we know these that they're able to by doing nonsense or nothing at all is questionable with the entire system. So of course we mentioned before we oversight and everything of our laws because certain things we as Guyanese should not accept. Having access to the basic electricity 24/7
Yeah.
when I could come make a pipe system the drainage system and build my own hydro plant,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
But we don't even have anything that the private sector. Understand, man? It's
Yeah. Well,
questionable.
what I think is may
Oneself.
happen in the near future. What I think may happen in the near future is that maybe a private company will come in, look at the situation. I don't know if that's going to happen very quickly, though, with seeing that we're going to have the gas to shore project on board by next year. All right. Which will help to power the grid as well. But I do believe that, having um, that dam system, the hydro plant system, because we have running water on a constant basis, we should have been able to take advantage of that. And the opposition should not have cut that, especially if it benefits all Guyanese, because having an efficient electrical grid and efficient electricity and power is benefiting all Guyanese. It just doesn't benefit a section of Guyanese. It benefits every Guyanese. So if people wanted to go into manufacturing, for example, in Linden, or they want to go into leather tanning and all of that, they could have been able to set up those things in Linden and have very low um, a very low bill in terms of electricity to set up those things in those areas because a hydro plant
Mm-hmm.
would have done excellent. You know what I'm saying?
Correct. It's funny how certain parts of Guyana and certain industries are able to capitalize on that. But bauxite um, area of business have their own electrical system. They have their own housing scheme and everything going on, right?
Yep. Yep.
But yet again, we haven't seen the roll over into other areas of business, right?
True.
Whereby, for instance, banks, I think between banks and Timacall and any other major beverage company should have had their own grid also, right?
Yeah.
Within
Yeah.
even even if we're looking at the rice and sugar industry, they should have had their own thing going on because how is it
Well,
that we
well,
got so much things but we suffering?
but the thing is, I wouldn't say they should have had their own grid. What I do believe should have happened is that the the government of Guyana, all right, although they attempted to have that and it was cut from the budget, we should have had our own setup so that these companies who are coming in to Guyana, especially for example, Bloomberg has come and signed contracts in Guyana. They want to do manufacturing and I think packaging and canning in Guyana, that's going to take a major infrastructural change for that to happen. We have
Mm-hmm.
Guyana is also going into producing milk, the whole dairy farm, the automate dairy farm in Guyana, which has to have a major power supply going there as well to have that run.
So
Because
this is where I'm
obviously,
saying
yeah,
10 administrative regions, 10 different power grid, brother. we
Well,
have
we could do
access and
that.
we have the capability, whether it be in the Rupunoni with all the clear land, and we got sun, we got wind, and in the
Yep.
regions where
The
we got the
wind,
major
we got water.
falls,
Mm-hmm.
we could make
Yep.
use of it.
Yep.
So
That's
there's
what I'm
really
talking
and
about.
truly no complaint that we have especially with access to finance and
Mhm.
technology.
Well,
Something gotta change overall.
something has to change, and I do believe, like I said earlier, the opposition should have never, in the case of projects that benefit the entire Guyana, they should
Mm-hmm.
have never cut those projects from the budget. And that happened during the presidency of Donald Ramata when there was a minority government in parliament. They should have
Mm.
never done that. Because if you could imagine if during that time we had established the Amila Fall, then Georgetown, Linden, and Berbice would have had no power issue. Then we could have set up one for Bartica. We could have set up one for maybe the Essequibo region further afield. Even where there is those Amerindian communities like Kaku and Jawala, they could have had an independent system, but it's also a hydro plant system. That would have made us basically even more self-sufficient. Even more self-sufficient. So again, I'm hoping that a lot of these opposition parties look at Guyana sensibly, not just from the political and the demagoguery, but they got to be able to come up with plans and policies that can benefit the entire Guyanese population. That's my take on it. But of course, when we have the conversation, the time really, really flies. So, Martin, what are your final thoughts before we got to wrap it up for this evening? Mm, seem to be having that same issue with the internet. But we got to wrap it up for this evening. You there, Martin? Why your internet giving you a beating? Your internet
Boy,
giving you
I
a
telling
beating
you.
today. Yeah, go right ahead though.
All right, as long as you're able to hear me, I was saying
Yeah,
once you
I'm hearing
know better, you do better. And
you. Yeah,
every time we come on here, we always bring different information or new information from a different perspective, right?
correct. Yeah.
So, in different areas, of course, a full referendum needs to happen for Guyana, and we need a full oversight, full enforcement, because that is our major problem. We got some steady laws, some strong laws,
You got
but
some
no
strong lads.
enforcement
No
of these
enforcement.
laws. And
That's a fact.
hence, we're on the bottom of the barrel trying to scrape as we go by day to day. You know, that would be
Well,
my final thoughts. We got to do better.
well, we know for a fact we have to do better as a growing economy. We have scheduled in 2026 to have just about 3.2, 3.3 million individuals come to Guyana. So we must have a strategy moving forward. How we going to deal with our country? How we going to deal with Guyanese? And how we going to deal with the people who are coming in to do business, to visit, and all of that. So we have to strategize, and this again is not the burden of the ruling party alone, because just to emphasize who the government is, all the individuals that occupy the 65 seats in Guyana's parliament are members of the government, whether they are on the
All them
opposition side,
honorables and PMs that you see.
exactly, whether they
Hmm.
on the opposition side or they on the ruling party side. So they all comprise the government and they all getting paid. They all go to the same lunchroom in parliament when there's a break and eat nicely till some of them just fall to sleep. All right. So let's have a focus for, of course, the upcoming elections. I'm not telling people who to vote for, although there is a lot of information out there. I think Guyanese got to read, edify themselves, and know what it is that they want. All right. So we got to wrap it up for this evening. Hope you had a great time here with us. We hope it was educational for you. Make sure you check us out tomorrow from 8 to 11 on the radio, on Majestic Music Radio, on Slam Radio, on my exclusive radio on Cut and Clear Radio on 96.7, 102.3 Triple R Radio and Studio M. Of course, we're the only syndicated show out of Guyana, South America. But just before we wrap it up, Martin, the disclaimer before we get out of here, bro.
And the disclaimers reads, the views, opinions, and statements expressed on the conversation are solely those of the individual host and guests, and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of our advertisers, Majestic Music Radio, Gem Radio, or Gem Networks. The content of the show is intended for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered as professional advice. Listeners' discretion is advised. Neither the station nor the network assumes any responsibility or ability for the accuracy, completeness, or validity of the information presented. All content is subject to change without prior notice.
And as we say, Google it, AI it for more information. But better yet, read direct sources to get your information. Don't get all your information on social media. Sometimes social media has its turns and twists. So make sure you get them from reliable sources. We got to get out of here until tomorrow. Remember, if you're driving, take it easy out there. It's crazy. A lot of accidents happening. Check us out tomorrow on the stations that we told you about for Guyana's industry show, The Rush. Until tomorrow morning, we out of here. Love your world. Love your Guyana. One people, one nation, one destiny.
One
We out of here.
destiny.
Yeah, man.